In this video, we're going to be talking about habits, what they are, and how we can change the bad ones and form new ones. A habit is an automatic action that we normally don't have very much control over. Up to 42% of our behavior can be driven by habits. A habit mainly involves 4 steps. These steps are a trigger, craving, behavior, and the reward. To explore the idea of the habit loop, let's go a little bit further and add an example. In this example, we have a guy who just woke up. He's super tired. So his trigger is waking up and feeling groggy. Then he's going to start craving some sort of release from this, which is going to be the coffee, his behavior of drinking the coffee, and finally his reward of feeling alive and energized. The way that these habit loops form is through operant conditioning, which is our behavior being rewarded or punished in some sort of way. When we're rewarded by a behavior, we tend to want to do it more and we get motivated to do that. For instance, in the coffee example, he was drinking coffee and then he felt energized and alive, and that's his reward. So, using this operant conditioning scheme, we can see that behavior patterns are rewarded and they're ingrained. They get more and more efficient and they need less energy and less thought to be activated. Dopamine is also released in this anticipation of the reward, so that would be the craving part of the last example. And dopamine also gets released as the reward, so that also adds to the pleasure that we're feeling when we get that reward. Each step of the habit loop can be changed and altered to help fit your goals. And to start off with, let's focus on the trigger. So one of the main things you can do is just notice the trigger. So for a lot of times, you might not actually know why we're doing a certain habit. If we take eating food when you're watching TV, is the habit because you're hungry, you're bored, or maybe you've just associated eating food with the TV. So you really have to notice what is the real trigger. And then the best thing you can do is try and remove it. Let's say you always come home from work and you see a bag of chips on the counter. Well, that's your trigger. And if you remove the trigger of the bag of chips, you're not going to have that urge to eat it. Moving on to the craving portion of the habit loop. This is something not many people think about, but it's actually very useful and has even been used in addiction treating. So, one of the main things you can do for craving is understanding how it works. So, as we said, the dopamine is released in anticipation of your reward, and this causes you to get an urge to go do that behavior. However, after some time, that urge is going to go away. So, it's kind of like a hump of your urge. Now, if you're mindful of this urge and you just let it happen and just think about it without actually doing anything, you'll begin to feel that you can just sort of ride that wave and get over it. Now, a good way to do this is by remembering the acronym of RAIN, which means recognize what's going on, like you're having an urge to do the habit. Then you need to allow that experience to happen. And then you need to investigate this experience, feel everything you're feeling and do it with kindness, not being really harsh on yourself or anything. And then you want to come to a natural awareness where you realize that this habit, this urge doesn't like define who you are, and you don't have to do the urge. It's just a sensation in your body, and you're merely the observer of that sensation. This feeling doesn't mean you have to go act on it. Now, action is a very interesting way to change this habit loop. And so for the action, you can replace this and only this in the loop. So for instance, let's say you come home from work and your trigger is coming home from work, and then you get a craving to go do something, go watch some TV. Normally you watch Mr. Krabs, okay? So that's your behavior. However, instead of watching Mr. Krabs, you're going to watch a documentary about Mr. Krabs. Now that's a habit you might actually want to do. You might actually think that's productive for your life. So then the reward stays the same as you're entertained and you relax from your day, except the action has changed from something that was not as beneficial to something that's more beneficial. Additionally, we can try and make that action be unattractive. So that would be like making it harder to do this certain action, or we can have accountability partners. So if we do that habit, we have to go tell them, and that'll cause some friction between us wanting to do the habit and not wanting to do it. Finally, in the loop, there's the reward. Now, this one's kind of hard to make any suggestions on, but I guess if there was a way you could try and remove the reward. But another thing to note for when you're trying to make positive habits is how random rewards work. So the whole idea behind randomizing your rewards is that you don't know when you're going to get the reward, and there's no pattern to whenever you get it. So this is the same sort of thing that casinos use. So you keep doing it and doing it and doing it because you always could get that reward. It's not guaranteed, and you never know if you're going to get it or not going to get it. This actually creates much more of an urge to go do that, and it makes this behavior that much more addictive and rewarding. So trying to implement some randomized rewards for your actual habits would be a very good idea. And finally, here are some other good tips for creating your own habits. That'd be to write them down, write down exactly when you're going to do them and how you're going to do them. Using an if then statement is really good. So if you wake up, then you're going to go brush your teeth or something like that. So now you already know exactly what you're going to do and you don't have to think about it. It's already laid out. So you're not going to have like the competition between your prefrontal cortex and your limbic system being like, should I do this? Should I not? Coming up with excuses that sort of just destroys the excuses. You can also set a time. That sort of goes back to the if then. You can reduce friction in doing this action. So that would be if you're going to the gym, you leave your gym shoes out in an easy place to get it, or you go to the gym right after work and you don't have to work. You don't have to walk a long way to get there. You can also randomize the rewards like we just talked about. And planning for uncertainties is very good. So if something crops up and maybe it's raining, so you don't really want to walk to the gym. So maybe you bring an umbrella and you still get to go to the gym because you came up with a plan for that uncertainty that was going to throw you off course. And finally, having an accountability partner can make it that much easier to stick to your habits.